Well, hello. How are you? You are live on Conversations with Dr. Els. It's an awesome day here in Barbados, and it's great to have all of you locked on to Conversations with Dr. Els. Okay, just take this time and let folks know Conversations with Dr. Els has started, and we are looking forward for a great conversation today. We are looking forward for a great conversation right now. So we just look for conversations with Dr. Els and just wait for you guys to come on and let's have this great conversation. So, hey, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your folks, Conversations with Dr. Els is live and alive. So, here we go. Let's get ready for a wonderful conversation. It's a beautiful day here in Barbados, and we're looking forward for great times. Remember, you can view Conversations with Dr. Els on Caribbean Gospel Jam. You can view it on Caribbean Gospel Jam, and we are there, and we would be having a great time. So hi to you guys. Thank you for locking on to Conversations with Dr. Els. Remember, you can share this broadcast. We look forward for all of you who are on and who will be on soon. So we're looking forward for great things. So guys, just tell somebody Conversations with Dr. Els is on, and let's have a great time on our conversation. All right. Good morning to good day to you, our mentor. Great having you, Leo Matthews. Great having you guys locked on to Conversations with Dr. Els. Welcome to you wherever you are. Remember, you can post your comments. You can share in this conversation. It is not just about what I share, but it is about what we would share together. Good day to you, Pastor Gibson. Great having you locked on. Stevie, great having you locked on to Conversations with Dr. Els. It's so great to see all you guys here on Conversations with Dr. Els, and we are looking for a wonderful time. A good day to you wherever you are. Those of you from South Africa, those of you from England, wherever you are, the US. We know that many of you view this conversation after, and we look forward for that. So wherever you are, welcome to Conversations with Dr. Els. Remember, Conversations with Dr. Els is on Caribbean Gospel Jam. You can check me out on YouTube, Dr. Els, on YouTube or YouTube channel. And soon, very soon. As a matter of fact, we will be launching this month KLN TV, Kingdom Lifestyle Network TV, and you can check that out. I will tell you when exactly the launch is. So you can check that out on KLN TV. We also will be having our seminar, our webinar on Egypt, right? We had been talking about that, and we're looking forward for you guys to be on that seminar just for a small contribution, but it's going to be really great. And we are going to be talking about decoding biblical Egypt. You know, as I said before, many times we hear about Egypt and we just hear all the negative about Egypt, but we want to decode biblical Egypt and show the significance of Egypt in the Christian history and even today. So, hello to all of you locked on to Conversations with Dr. Els. Jackie, great having you locked on. Pastor Danley, great having you locked on. Amen. It is a wonderful day. And we today, as you may have seen, we are going to talk about prenuptial agreements. All right. We're going to talk about prenuptial agreement, and we're going to hear you guys. Good day to you, Olivia. Great having you locked on to Conversations with Dr. Els. So let's jump right into our topic. But let me remind you that you need to share this broadcast. You need to share this conversation. You need to engage with me in this conversation. Okay, prenuptial agreement. Should we have a prenuptial agreement before we get married? So, man and woman have decided that hey, they are going to get married. They love each other. They look out for each other. They've been dating for however long they've been dating, and now it is time to get married. But one party has a lot of um, what would you say? One party has a lot of assets. Okay, let's just use that. So you have a lot of assets, and the other party coming in really don't have any assets or don't have much, and you are deciding, hey, before we get into marriage, because and you know, one of the things that we understand with that is the reason why we're making prenuptial agreement is because you understand that the concept of marriage, or the original concept of marriage, means that once we get married, we share our resources together. And some people are not willing to share their resources, and therefore they decide to have a prenuptial agreement. And so the question is, should we have prenuptial agreement in marriage? Should we have that legal document? Or the other aspect of this is that both parties have lots of assets, and they want to make sure that some person don't get their assets, or what you don't get what you did not come into the marriage with, and therefore you make these prenuptial agreements. So you decide, okay, I have X, Y, and Z, and you have A, B, and C, and therefore, if the marriage is to break up, if we are to separate, if we are to go away, you cannot claim X, Y, or Z that I have, and I can claim A, B, and C that you have. The only thing that we will be able to claim from each other will be what we've gathered together in the whole aspect of the marriage. And so, is that really right? And even from a Christian perspective, and you can start to comment right now, is that what should be? Should we really have that prenuptial agreement? Should we have that legal papers deciding, hey, we need to have that prenuptial agreement? Let me just say hi, Irene. Irene is on with us. Great having you locked on to Conversations with Dr. L. So, is it okay to have a prenuptial agreement? Now, we many Christians have decided, or you would hear they say generally, no, you should not have prenuptial agreement. But a lot of times, persons who say that you should not have a prenuptial agreement are persons who don't have anything, all right, or persons who don't have much. And so they see it from the standpoint of not having much. Okay, Dr. Neil, are you really saying that we should have? We can come to that, right? But that is often the idea of persons who don't have much. They're the ones who would say, you know what, you should not have a prenuptial agreement because they do not understand from the standpoint of those who have, and from the standpoint of persons coming into marriage for different reasons. Okay. And so one say yours is mine and mine is yours. If that is the way that it should be, should that be what marriage is about? Okay. But today we want to talk about that because we want to dig into the whole aspect of this prenuptial agreement. And I am saying emphatically that every couple should have a prenuptial agreement. Dr. Els, what are you saying? All right, this is what I'm saying. Every couple should have a prenuptial agreement. And you can let me know, you can agree with me or you can disagree with me. Now, what kind of prenuptial agreement that every couple should have? I am not talking on this, I'm not talking on this conversation about the legal prenuptial agreement that many would have. Because from my standpoint, from a faith-based standpoint, I believe that with marriage, you should share with each other. Okay? So from the standpoint of getting a lawyer, drafting up a prenuptial agreement and doing all these things, I would say no to that. And that's my personal my conviction, right? That's my personal conviction. So, but then, should we have prenuptial agreement? What kind of prenuptial agreement we should have? The legal document protect assets, and what I found is that that is somewhat because of distrust. Now, if you are going to marry to someone, you must trust that one, or you should trust that person. Otherwise, if there's no level of trust, then you should not get married. You should not join together. You should not be a couple. You should not live together. You should not want to share with each other. But there must be a measure of trust in the relationship. And so having to go to a lawyer and draft up a prenuptial agreement, that tells that there isn't that level of trust. And sorry, I don't believe that that should be. Okay, to me, for marriage to start this way is to suggest trust issues, and that's exactly what we are saying. Okay, if you must start your marriage with a legal document, a legal prenuptial agreement, then you have trust issues and you should not live with each other, because often we know that we have persons here who are not married or who are not Christians. So you should not live with each other. You should not be partners together unless you looking to be roommates or something. But if you are really involving your life, entangling your life with each other, then you should not have a prenuptial agreement, because it means that you are not trusting each other. All right, let me just say hi to Evan, my brother. Great having you locked on to conversations with Dr. Els. But I also believe that apart from that, each marriage should have a prenuptial agreement. Okay, I believe that each marriage should have a prenuptial agreement, and the prenuptial agreement that I'm talking about is understanding, have some agreement as to what you want your relationship, what you want your marriage to look like before you get there. Okay, so this is a different type of prenuptial agreement that I want to, from a family standpoint, to share. Okay, so here's a question. What about marrying someone but you have children from a previous relationship? How do you protect your children's interests if something happens? Okay, and again, there is a trust issue. So you have children. One party, let's use an example. One party may have a property and they may have children, and the other party may not have. Okay, and you're thinking if I should die, or the other party may have also children. So let's say one party, both parties have children, but one party has assets, has properties, or such like that, and you're thinking that what if I pass or if something should happen? Now, would that other party unfair my children? How do I protect them and protect their interests? I go back to my foundational belief. If you have to start to think of that, then don't marry the person. Don't engage with the person. And here is the reason. Here is the reason why I'm saying that you do need a prenuptial agreement. A prenuptial agreement, not in the sense of a legal agreement, but a prenuptial agreement in how are we going to deal with that situation. Okay, and so I'm going to answer that question a little further down in our conversation. Okay, so if a person here is another comment. If a person protects their asset pre-marriage, they have trust issue. Definitely. Because if you are entangling with someone, you should be entangling, understanding that whatever I have belongs to that person, and whatever that person have belongs to me. So I'm saying that if you don't want to share that with that person, then you should not entangle with that person. And it's from that standpoint we're talking. I mean, yes, protecting your assets is okay and such like that. But if you are going to say I do, and in health and in sickness, and whatever I have is yours and whatever you have is mine, then you don't need to go and do that. So let me just continue reading. I don't say we can share everything we gain during the marriage. I maintain it's only people who come into the marriage with little would say the person doesn't trust them. And I said that before because this is the issue that many people have. Those who don't have. But really, when we read from a biblical standpoint, when we read that God says that you leave and you cleave and you join together, what must be joined together? Is it only the persons, or does it include their assets? All right, we're gonna get to that because I believe there's a way that we need to get around this than to go through a legal aspect. Okay, what you're going to do if your partner don't like your children. To answer that question, don't marry that partner. If you are marrying someone, if you're engaging with someone and they don't like your children, then that is a red flag. Do not get into that relationship. Okay, and so definitely children's interests should be declared and protected. And I agree with that. I am not saying that you should not. But here's what I'm saying. I am saying that there must be that agreement. And this is a different kind of prenuptial agreement that I'm talking about, that before you get into a relationship with someone, there are certain things that you need to be clear on, and that includes all of that. We read this comment. You come with the package. So if you feel that I have more, if I feel that I have more than someone, and I don't love them enough to share my entire being and assets with them, don't engage. All right. um this the dislike may only show up after the marriage vows. Well, to me, it means that you really have not spent time, and that's why I always go back to say, if a person is marrying, then they really need to spend time knowing and getting to know the person in different areas. Okay. You met me with my children, so it's an all of us or none of us situation. And so I agree, I agree with that. So if you met me with my children, and therefore when we are getting into relationship, when we are talking about marriage, when we are talking about living together, children, the aspect of children must come into play. So things really, the prenuptial agreement that I propose is one of what is my marriage or what is my relationship going to look like? What is my marriage relationship going to look like? And you talk about it before you get into it, because if you're getting into marriage, especially, it should be all or none. Okay, it should be all or none. And I believe that for us as Christians, this should be our view. And if you can't get into it with all or none, then my solution is don't step into it. And I think that is the key, that is the base. We can come up with a lot of things, but the base is, if there are important things that you have not dealt with or you can't agree upon, you can't work through, then don't get into it, because marriage should be all or none, a leaving and a cleaving and a weaving, a joining together. And so we need to do that. If you again, the dislike shows only after can the person so want to be in a relationship that they ignore the signs of dislike. I'm telling you, the latter part is my belief. You want to get into it that you ignore the signs. You will see signs. You will see, and if you take the time to get to know the person, you know the song that says, "Take time to know her. It's not an overnight thing." Okay, if you take time to know the person, then you're gonna see. And I'm not saying that you may not find things that you don't like, but if you have that prenuptial agreement, if you are able to deal with the issues and talk about the issues before, then you are going to resolve a lot of the problems that you would have in marriage. And of course, the scary thing is sometimes people change and on you. How do you really know for sure, even after years? It is really not that the person changed. It's really that the person, that who the person was all the time. But most of the time, we don't really get to know or see that person. And that's why it's important to see that person and get to know that person in different aspects of life. Okay, so if you can't deal with it, just leave it out. Okay. Let me take this comment. Granny used to say, marry in haste, repent at leisure. Okay, better to take the time before, and that is so correct. Okay, it's really better to take the time before, and we have to understand that marriage is not a lifetime commitment. Is not something that you rush into. Um, Okay, so we need to understand that. We need to understand that we can't rush into things from a marriage counselor standpoint, from a pastor standpoint. from the pastor, a pastor's standpoint, someone who does premarital counseling, I always say one of the challenges that we have is that people come to us and say, I want to get married. I want to get married on this date. I've already bought my dress. I've already done planned everything and such like that. And I need to get married. And because one of the requirements for marriage from a pastoral standpoint is that you have premarital counseling. You go through premarital counseling and you go through the motion, and sometimes in the counseling you're seeing all sort of red flags, and you're saying, hey, I'm ignoring that. I'm ignoring that. So the thing is not that you will not have hard times. The thing is not that you will not have issues, but you are able to fix those issues. You're able to deal with those issues. Can you really truly know the person from a Christian standpoint? If you're trusting God, if both of you are Christians, you can't know. The Bible says only the Spirit of God really knows what's inside you, but you're going to have enough knowledge of the person to be able to make a decision as to whether or not you want to or you should marry that person. And so, as what I'm saying here is that you need to be able to talk with each other. This is the prenuptial agreement that I believe in. You need to be able to talk with each other and begin to discuss how your marriage or your relationship, what it should be like. Okay, and therefore, if you begin to discuss these things, then you have, and I'm talking about really getting down and discuss this. You're going to find out certain things from the person. Remember, in one of our conversations, I said if you are going to marry someone, you need to know their values. You need to have some non-negotiables and some things that you can pass on. Okay, let's read this comment. If you ask the right questions and observe utilizing the spirit of discernment as a believer, you can get enough intel to make the right decision. Let me just give you a sneak peek also. Very soon I am coming out with a book, or I should say it should be a workbook. I'm thinking of it as a workbook where we can have questions that you can ask each other, so that you can come up with some answers. So I'm gonna call a name here, my friend Irene. This is one of the things you probably can hold me accountable. Remember, we talk about goals and such. This is one of my goals for 2022. I want to come up with something so that persons who are thinking of getting married, or persons who are getting into relationship and really want to get to know each other, there's some key things, some key questions I believe that we should ask. And so I'm preparing a workbook. I'm going to be preparing a workbook with some of these questions, so you can look out for it. And I probably could tell you, as conversations with Dr. L's family, you can have it at a discounted price. But we're going to talk about that a little later. So someone is saying the main problem in a marriage is communication and trust. And if that is the main problem in a marriage, then before you get into the marriage, it is something that you need to deal with. It's something that you need to work on. Okay. And one of the things, one prenuptial agreement that I believe you should have is to decide what's the foundation. Okay, what is the foundation of your relationship? What is the foundation of your marriage? Just say hi to Idina. Great having you locked on to conversations with Dr. L. So here is a question. What is the foundation of your relationship? And you need to decide that from early. Okay. We understand from a biblical standpoint that the Bible is our marriage manual. The Bible is to be, from a Christian standpoint, our marriage manual. And so when we are having issues, when there are situations that we face, then the Bible should be the guide that we look to. Okay, and so even if you have persons who are not Christians or such, they need to be able to decide what is the foundation. What is, when we are in a battle, let's put it that way, and it is one and one, who would be the tiebreaker, or what would be the tiebreaker? Okay, so when we talk about prenuptial agreement, we are talking about agreeing on certain things before we get into the marriage itself, talking about certain things and coming to an agreement. So this is one that I'm saying, when, because we're gonna have challenges. Any relationship will have challenges, and so you have to decide, when we have our challenges, how do we deal with that? Prenuptial agreement, agree on what is the foundation of our marriage. You're talking about wanting children. These are key prenuptial agreements that should be made. You can't get into marriage and then later find out that the man wants children and the woman don't want, or vice versa, or find out that one person can have children or the other. These are the kind of prenuptial agreement that you should have. Okay, let's continue this conversation. Two key questions to put in the manual. Okay, are you in debt, and what is the amount? I'm telling you that financial issues, we're talking about that in a little bit, but definitely you get into somebody space, you get married, and then you can't wait until then to find out that, hey, this person had a mountain of debt. Because you need to know, you're coming into that now, because you understand that person's debt becomes your debt, right? So, are you in debt? What is the amount? Do you have a sexually transmitted disease? And are you willing to get tested by a doctor? I choose and have the results open in front of me. Oh, okay, sorry. Let's read that again. Are you willing to get tested by a doctor? I choose and have the results open in front of me. And so it goes vice versa. If you want me to do that, are you willing to do that also? And so, yes, key questions. You know, uh, I yes, so I agree. I asked my wife to be so many questions. I asked my wife to be so many questions, and this is key. Many times we love each other so much, and nothing is wrong with that. We really love each other so much that we tend to forget to ask certain questions. And mind you, these are some things that I have learned during my marriages. Certain things that I could have asked before, certain things that I may have known before, that I have to deal with after. And thank God, because the foundation, because we've decided the foundation is following Jesus, following the marriage manual, the Bible, then we're able to navigate through that. And so I would not want persons to make some mistakes that many married couple has made. So therefore, it's important. So we're talking about that. Prenuptial agreement is making certain decision, having certain agreements before you get into that relationship. So, guys, here is why I'm saying I believe in having prenuptial agreement. It is key while getting into the one with the legal aspect that comes out because of distrust. shows a lot of red flag, we need to have prenuptial agreement. What about, for example, if you are coming from two different worldviews? Okay, you need to have such a conversation. You need to have this conversation. You're coming from two different worldviews or two different cultures, and then we have married people here. We have persons here who are married, and they're coming from two different cultures. And of course, I can identify with some of them, right? But when you come from two different cultures, how do you deal with that? I saw a question on one of my friends page where one person did not know what certain thing, and I'm not calling names, and I'm not selling out anybody, but one person don't know the term of the very same thing that the person knows, and we do have that. So we call just recently, I have a friend who preached, and the friend said, use the word cab, right? And I quickly smile, and then I spoke to my wife, and I asked my wife, do you know what the term cab mean? And my wife has no idea of what the term cab mean, but I knew exactly what my friend meant. Okay, as he was preaching, and so my friend quickly changed and said, well, added, I should say, spank, right? To understand what that means. So what I'm saying here is really that if you're coming from two different cultures, there are things that you need to talk about. You need to have a prenuptial agreement, not with what words mean and such like that. Really, that might be on the surface thing, but how do we deal with children? Okay, let me just say hi to Cecile. Great having you locked on to conversations with Dr. L. How do you raise children? Okay, that's two different worldviews, two different cultures, and you need to be able to talk about that. I always give the example, in my earlier marriage, when I come from a culture where as a boy I am running up and down outside pitching marbles, playing cricket, barefooted, and sorry, I just think about it, and such like that, and just laughing, because I remember running about barefoot, and playing cricket, and shirt off, just in a short pants, and such like that, and we are always outside, in the village, and we are free, and we are happy. And then my wife, then with our son, my wife then, would say to your hand, say, don't, put on something, or don't go out like that. And the thing is, the way we raise children is important. All right, the way we raise children is important, and therefore we need to be able to agree on some key issues of raising our children, in having that prenuptial agreement. All right. Yes, somebody said marbles. Correct. I was talking earlier. I don't know if you missed it, but I was talking earlier about using terms like cab and spanking. All right. And how do we agree on such like that? But the key issue here is that you should have a prenuptial agreement. Okay. Okay, I understand. You should have a prenuptial agreement. Let's just say hi to Yvette. Great having you locked on to conversation with Dr. Els. And the prenuptial agreement that we're talking about is being able to set a certain thing. So if you're coming from two different worldviews, then you need to understand each other. You need to work with each other. You need to be able to have a conversation of just what are the foundational things that needs to be done. How are we raising children? What school we would like them to go? What about their education? How are we going to deal with that? What are we going to send them to private school? Are we able to do that, or do we send them to public school? These are important things that we need to talk about before marriage. And so these key questions and these key discussions are some of the things that we need to have when we're dealing with getting into a relationship, when we're dealing with marriage. This is the different kind of prenuptial agreement that we need to have. So if you are married and you did not have that, you need to be able to work through that. And as you continue, if you're not married, let me say, don't get into the relationship, don't get into marriage, don't make a lifelong commitment without having that prenuptial agreement. Okay, don't get into it without having that prenuptial agreement. As I said, we need this conversation when there is a 1-to-1 vote. Okay, what is the tiebreaker? Who is the tiebreaker in your relationship? Okay, who is the tiebreaker? I just see a couple of my friends on and just want to say hi. Ada, great having you locked on to Conversations with Dr. Els. Drizel, great having you locked on. So uh, Ava, great having you locked on to Conversations with Dr. Els. It's really great having you guys. Really great having you guys on. So we are talking about having a prenuptial agreement, okay, in our relationship, in marriage, before we decide to have that lifelong commitment. Or if we are deciding to have a lifelong commitment, then we need to have that prenuptial agreement. We need to be able to decide if we are going to continue and how we are going to continue. One of the things that was said earlier in the comments is finances. How are we going to deal with our finances? Are we going to have two separate accounts? Who is going to pay the bills? How are we going to deal with the bills? Do we sit down every month and write out what bills we have and how we're going to pay them, how we are going to juggle the finances? Or do we leave it for one person? The person might be the financial guru, be able to deal with finances better than the other person. Do we leave it to that other person? And if we do, what is the responsibility of the person? Should that person come every month and say, hey, I am going to tell you everything and how the bills are paid? Or do you leave it to say, hey, you take charge of that, as long as the bills are paid, I'm okay with that? Let me just read this comment. There are some things that are deal breakers. Don't ignore them just because you want to have a ring and a wedding. And you see, the thing is, many a times people prepare and they do all kind of things preparing for the wedding, but they do not prepare for the marriage. And that's the key. We have to prepare for marriage rather than preparing for the wedding. All right. Great having you locked on to Conversations with Dr. Els Porto. Great having you locked on. So very important that we prepare for the marriage. And the prenuptial agreement we are talking about is the agreement that prepares you not for the wedding day, but for the marriage. And many times we need that. Okay. Finances are important. Do we have one bank account, or is there need? What about we're coming in and each person would have had their bank accounts? Do we close those and have one bank account, or do we decide to have a joint account along with the individual account? What money goes into that account? Should we have money on the side? How do we deal with finances? How do we spend the money? And these are key things, because you come into a lifelong relationship, and you don't have that. So let's get some of the comments, as we're almost out of time. I would rather find out a deal breaker the day of the wedding than marry the person just because everything has already been paid for. Marriage is a lifetime, and I so agree with you on that, because I know persons who leave the marriage the very day of the wedding. Well, not leave the marriage, but the very wedding day decide that, hey, I am not going through with this. I know of relationship that has broken when almost everything, dress and suits and such, already been bought, but something was found out, and that's it. What do you do when your partner is not paying the bills? Um, and my question in response to that question is for you to expound a bit more, because if your partner is responsible for paying the bills and your partner is not paying the bills, then there need to be a serious conversation. How do you what are the challenges? Why the partner isn't paying the bill? Is the person okay? Great. Here's the question: is the person the designated one to pay the bills? And that's why you need that prenuptial agreement. Who pays the bills? Do we just in some marriage, the first person who find the bill just pick it up and pay it. You don't worry about the other person and whether they have enough money to pay the bill or whatever. And in relationship where you have persons who have that kind of finances and that ability to do so, you tend to have that. Okay. So and that's the key. That's where we're talking about having that agreement, especially when both parties are working. You have a problem, but mind you, when one party isn't working, you do have a problem too, because the party that is working from time to time, for some people, I'm not saying this is so in every marriage, but for the oftentimes the party who is bringing in the finances, the party who is who is working, often feel that they're the superior one, and so they tend to not want to okay, let me put it this way. They tend to believe that, hey, I can do whatever I want because I am the person bringing in the finances. That's a problem. That's a problem right there in the marriage. Okay? Just say hi to Daniel. Great having you locked on to conversations with Dr. Els. Egbert, great having you locked on to conversations with Dr. Els. And remember, guys, you can share this conversation. Okay, share this conversation right now. There are a lot of people who need to hear your wisdom and their great wisdom that you're putting out there in the chat. So persons want to hear your wisdom and to know. So we are saying that we need to have a prenuptial agreement. Okay, if you're going to get into marriage, you need a prenuptial agreement. Teamwork makes the dream work. This is why, right, Dr. Els is saying to have a discussion on these things beforehand. And that is true. This is why I'm saying have that prenuptial agreement. Agree on certain, you see, there are some little things that you may not know, or you may not be able to agree on before you get married, because there is what we call the ideal marriage and the real marriage. Okay, um, you have that, but you can get into. That's why in the agreement, that you decide how are we going to deal with things that comes up. All right. Let me just say hi to Dianza. Great having you locked on to conversations with Dr. Els. We have to talk. Okay, we have to talk. So here's what we're talking about. Having a prenuptial agreement is important. And we're coming down to the end of this conversation. And I realize there's so much more that we need to talk about, okay, in having a prenuptial agreement. So, therefore, God's willing, next week we're going to have part two of this. Why we should have a prenuptial agreement in a relationship or in marriage. And remember, there are persons who live together, there are persons whose lives are intertwined. They even not maybe living in the same house, because this is for those of you who are wide, okay? Again, conversations with Dr. Els, we deal with things from a faith-based standpoint, okay? But we are not exclusive to we don't leave out persons who may not be married or may not be Christians, because we believe that there are principles that we all can share and learn from, and from that standpoint, okay? So it is not just for Christians, but it's from a faith base, it's from a Christian perspective. So we understand that. Okay, and somebody's in part two of a 6 week. This is the 1st of February. This is the love month as it is seen. So we have quite a bit to deal with in this aspect. But guys, I want you to join me next week at 12 Atlantic Standard Time, and we will continue this whole idea of prenuptial agreement. But what have we said? We said that, if you are getting into the legal aspect of a prenuptial agreement, there can be some trust issues there. But there must be a different kind of prenuptial agreement that you should have, and that needs to be dealt with. That needs to be dealt with before you either get into marriage or before you have that lifelong commitment with someone else. And so, some of the things that you need to think about, you need to talk about finances. Okay, what's the tiebreaker? Okay, when I have an opinion, and when I'm strong on my opinion and you're strong on your opinion, and we need to come to some agreement, what or who is the tiebreaker there? Okay, when we are coming from two different worldviews or two different cultures, how do we deal with things like raising our children? How do we deal with things like our children's education, how we deal with things with taking care of the home and such like that? We need to have that conversation. What about wanting children? We need to have that conversation, because we can't come in and then recognize one person wants children and one person don't want, or one person is willing to adopt children if they can't have biological children, and the other person are not willing to adopt. So these are some of the things that we need to talk about. What is the foundation? What is the final person opinion in our marriage? Okay, what is the foundation? Is the Bible our marriage manual? Are we following Jesus? Okay, what is our marriage going to look like? What is our relationship going to look like? These are some of the things that you need to consider, and there are a lot more that we need to talk about. But for this conversation, we are going to pause it here, and I'm looking forward to see you guys next week for conversations with Dr. Els, God's willing. And remember, you can still share this broadcast. Remember, you can share it even after we finish, for those who you think need to hear this and you think need to be a part of this. And also let them know part two next week, so you can join us for conversations with Dr. Els. So, guys, it's really been good chatting with you. It's really been good having this conversation. And remember, whatever you do today, add value to someone's life. See you next week, God's willing. Have a blessed evening. Someone say, I've enjoyed today's session. Topic needs to be developed more. So, yes, next week we're continuing this topic, and God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of the day until next week. And remember, we're looking forward for continued great things on Conversations with Dr. Els. So, blessings on you. Have a wonderful day.